Alright, on this one, you definitely want to get a picture going here. So I've started this off with the 6-foot person. They're walking away from a building or broadcast tower. I assumed it was a building. So here's my tower. And at some point, when the person is 132 feet from the tower, the tip of their shadow starts to appear beyond those shadows, the tower shadow. So the tower has a shadow, and when he's this far away, the guy's shadow matches up with it and starts to go past it. Alright, so when I look at it like this, let's see, well, part A says draw a right triangle. So here's a right triangle, here's a right triangle. It gives a visual representation of the problem, label the quantities, and use a variable to represent the height of the tower. I'm going to call it h. Okay, well, there's part A of the question. I knew I wanted a picture anyway, so I didn't even read that far ahead. Part B says use a trig function to write an equation involving the unknown quantity. So if I pick one of these acute angles, maybe this, that'd be the most common one. I could say I'm interested in finding the opposite of the big triangle, opposite, when I know the adjacent of the big triangle. The adjacent of the big triangle is 135 feet. And if I'm pairing up opposite and adjacent, then that of course is tangent. So there's part B. Here's a trig function. It's an equation, and it's got the unknown quantity in it. Okay, part C, you could solve this in two fairly easy ways. Now part of the problem of solving B is that you can't solve this yet because you've got two variables. You don't know theta, you don't know h. Those are both variables. You can only solve an equation if you only have one variable. So since h is our kind of end goal here, realize that you could find theta by doing inverse tangent. So this is where the small triangle comes into play. And the small triangle opposite over adjacent would be 6 over 3. And if you throw that in your calculator, inverse tangent of 6/3, it's about 63.435 degrees. But if you're going to do that, don't use this number. You need to keep the exact number that your calculator has. So I'm actually going to store that in my calculator as x. Then you could bring this back down here and say, okay, wait a second. The tangent of theta, or the tangent of x, so I'm going to put in the calculator, is equal to the height divided by 135. So I will multiply both sides by 135. Put that in the calculator, and you end up with 270 feet. So that's kind of the trig way to work the question. Most people who didn't need help with this question, the way that they solved it is really not with trig at all, and I'm fine with that. You don't have to have trig to do this, but you do have to know these skills. You do have to be able to do inverse trig functions to find angles. You do have to be able to do SOHCAHTOA equations to find sides of a right triangle. You do have to be able to make pictures given description like I did here. But the way a lot of people do it is how you saw it in geometry, and probably how you'd want to approach it on an ACT test too. So what you have here is you've got similar triangles. You've got the smaller triangle that is 3 by 6, and you've got this bigger triangle that is 135 by h. And I know they're similar triangles because of angle. This big triangle has an angle of 90 and an angle of theta, and the small triangle has an angle of 90 and an angle of theta. And angle is enough to prove that triangles are similar. So not congruent. Congruent means they'd be the same size and shape, but similar. So not necessarily the same size, but definitely the same shape. And then you can just do a proportion. That's what's really nice about similar triangles, is that the sides are proportional. So you could do like 3/6 is proportional to 135/h. You just have to be consistent with how you do it. If you put 3/6, you need to put 135/h. Then you cross multiply, solve there. You can see that the denominator is twice as big here, so the denominator is going to be twice as big there, and you would end up with the same answer I got taking the trig approach.